Honorable Dr. Hussain Mohi-ud-Din Qadri, Chairman, Supreme Council of Minhaj al-Quran International, worthy Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Sajid Mahmood Shehzad, Mr. Salimullah Sahab, Deputy Governor, State Bank of Pakistan, Mr. Abdul Rahman Badaij, Commissioner, SCCP, Sheikh Shabbir Hassan Mesami, Chairman Al-Sadiq Institute of Islamic Finance, Mr. Muhammad Murtaza, CEO, Rural Community Development Program, representatives of Qatar Group, Mr. Zafar Mahmood Chaudhary, Senior Vice President, Lahore Chamber of Commerce, Honorable Dr. Qibla Ayaz, Chairman, Islamic Ideology Council of Pakistan, all the respectable, honorable dignitaries, guests, speakers who have traveled from various parts of the world to participate in this conference, presenters from all over Pakistan who will be presenting their works, papers, insights on the topic of Islamic banking and finance. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all in the 7th continuous conference by Minhaj University Lahore on Islamic banking and finance. I would also like to extend my gratitude and appreciation to all the co-chairs and co-organizers of this conference. Dear Dr. Maurice Shaukat, Dr. Ishaq Bhatti, and all other co-chairs and co-organizers of this conference. They have been part of this conference and initiative since the beginning, and I believe their continuous support and collaboration has strengthened this platform and forum. And this is growing every next year, alhamdulillah. I would also like to appreciate all the partners of this conference who have joined hands with Minhaj University Lahore to make this event possible. And I appreciate that they are taking part in those activities which are important for the flourishing and growing future of Islamic finance and economics in Pakistan. I would also like to congratulate all the staff and team members and university's conference secretariat under the supervision of our registrar, Dr. Khurram Shehzad, for putting their efforts in making this beautiful conference a success. So every single one among you who have put their day and nights to make this event possible and successful, I congratulate you all. And I would like to request the participants to give them a big round of applause. Dear audience, today for my speech I have selected an important topic. Rather, I would say a proposal for a solution to a concern which is something of grave nature for Pakistan, and not just for Pakistan, for every single Muslim country around the world. And I believe this proposal has a potential to provide a solution to this concern if the governments and policy implementing authorities take this proposal into consideration. But before that, let me say a few words about the background, why we are talking about this proposal and what made us think about this proposal. In recent years, the global economic environment has undergone a dramatic upheaval, pushing countries to reconsider their financial strategy and seek more self-reliant and independent way to economic stability. Same is the case with Muslim countries of the world. The global economic outlook of the world, and more specifically the Muslim world, remain precarious because of Russia-Ukraine conflict, which aggravated supply-side disrupts international commodity market and drives inflation. It is anticipated that their growth will slow to 4.9% and 4.3% in coming years. The pandemic also resulted in the loss of 32.5 million time equivalent jobs in only OIC countries, and a global unemployment rate decreased by 0.4% in 2021 to reach 6.2%. As demand increased, supply responded more slowly, resulting in higher commodity price and inflation in the world, and specifically in OIC countries. Talking about global unemployment, which stood at 214.2 million in 2021, down 9.5 million from previous year, but still 28.3 million above the pre-pandemic level. If we talk about poverty levels and conditions in OIC countries, agriculture and food sector experienced substantial supply chain disruption due to pandemic, which put millions of people relying heavily on agriculture at risk. The food price index of food and agriculture, according to Food and Agriculture Organization, indicated that food prices in international markets increased by 3.2% in 2020 and 28.2% in 2021. They are further aggregated by rising inflation and effects of wars in various regions of the world going on today. World Bank estimates that these combined crises will lead to an additional 75 million to 95 million people living in extreme poverty. Governments can mitigate such impact through social protection policies, but the fragile economic system of many OIC member countries are unfortunately not able to fully cope with these challenges. The lack of financial resources to provide support to help overcome long period of reduced economic activity and interruption in informal economic activity, which millions of people rely on, further added to the poverty and inequality problem in these countries. On the similar lines, if we look at the economic landscape of Pakistan, we see from June 2017 to June 2023, these 5 years unfolds as a tale of stark contrasts and resilience of an emerging economy. It begins on a hopeful note with growth at a steady clip of 4.61%. This momentum is carried forward into the next year, surging to 6.10%. However, the narrative takes a dramatic turn as an economy dips into negative by June 2020, with a contraction of 0.94% by June 2023. The growth rate has dropped off considerably and contracted considerably to 0.29%, which brings forth question about the path ahead for the country. If we talk about the foreign debts, analyzing the debt trends of Pakistan, it is evident that the country has grappled with a fluctuating debt burden reflective of episodic financial interventions and a cyclical nature of economic reforms. The inflation trend in Pakistan indicates significant economic volatility over 2 years period. The consistent increase in inflation from February 2021 to December 2023 is indicative of underlying economic pressures for the country. Export and imports of the country, if we examine them, from July 2022 to November 2023 reveals a consistent trade deficit, with imports significantly outpacing exports throughout the period. Dear audience, the IMF's projections for Pakistan's fiscal year 2024 suggest that unemployment will be at 8%, which is higher than 6.2% in fiscal year 2022. Talking about the infrastructure of the country, the lack of investment in certain sectors like water sector has had a cascading effect on the country's economic growth, agriculture output, and employment, particularly in rural areas. The persistent rank of Pakistan at 161 in the Human Development Index is indicative of several deep-rooted issues. Dear audience, we talked about economic conditions of many OIC member countries, and this story goes on in many other countries around the world, outside OIC member countries as well. What happens when the country faces this kind of circumstances? They move towards external or foreign financial institutions for financial assistance, because they see a hope of survival only by reaching out to those foreign financial institutions like IMF. So they always come to support and help countries in trouble like Pakistan, and they provide them with bailout packages, they provide them with financial assistance so that they can come out of those emergencies. But on what? They provide those assistance and financial support on interest basis. I would say a very high interest basis. So whenever this help comes to these countries, so that comes with a lot of pre-confirmed costs which all these countries have to bear to get rid of that financial crunch and crisis. I don't blame these foreign financial institutions. They always come to help the countries in trouble, because if you reach out to any conventional model of banking or financial assistance, they would do that because that is their business model. So no need to blame these institutions. But what we need to look at is Allah Almighty and Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They have provided us with the right solution, but we do not look towards those solutions and we run towards other assistances and support systems, leaving and forgetting what Allah Almighty and Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given through their teachings and preachings. So automatically those solutions will not be enough and will not be there to bring us out from the troubles we all or these OIC countries are indulged in. Look at the chart. On the screen you can have a look on the chart of financial commitments, or I would rather say look at the list of these Muslim countries, how much they owe to IMF, and similarly there are many more institutions these countries they owe to them. Just to give us an idea that when this assistance comes, it comes with a lot of troubles and cost as well. For example, Afghanistan, you see $375 million, a very small economy, but this much burden from the external financial institutions' loans. Talk about Pakistan. Only Pakistan owes $7.5 billion to IMF only. And then 0.3 billion to Paris Club, and then that continues. Egypt, they owe $12.3 billion to IMF only. And then Tunisia, they owe $13.5 billion to IMF only. So these were just a few examples from the Muslim countries, how much they owe to IMF. And similarly, there are other financial institutions around the world who are lending money to these Muslim countries as well. Again, upon their request, they provide support. That's their business model. But then what happens? We'll discuss some other figures. Let's say Pakistan, in 2018, the lended money from the foreign financial institutions was around 2.5 billion in one type of figure. And then with the added value of interest repayments, this whole amount and loan changed into 19.49 billion US dollar in 2021. So around 7 billion or more amount was only going in interest repayments. Same is the case with couple of other countries like Indonesia. The external debt was around, in 2018 it was around 337 billion dollars. But by 2020, 13.7 billion dollar was peaked and added into this whole circle in the name of interest repayments. Same is the cases with Bangladesh. The principal amount which was given to these countries as a loan or money lended by foreign institution was this much, maybe $75 billion. But 2022, the value addition into that loan and that whole amount, around $5.14 billion worth of interest was added on the principal amount, which increased this total amount to be paid back by those countries to those foreign institutions. So the argument which I am making here, that no blame to these foreign institutions. That is their business model. The issue is with the governments when they approach to those institutions and take these loans to come out of these financial crises, to get rid of that financial crisis. When they reach out to these institutions and they take these loans and financial assistance on a very high cost and amount. This is where the issue arises. And this issue or financial burden does not come in isolation. And it is not in the isolation, but have a profound implication for social well-being and development in these countries. Implication for the continued inability to manage and reduce this debt could lead to further economic instability in these countries, hindering progress in areas like healthcare and education and infrastructure. Therefore, there is an urgent need for a targeted initiative and support to alleviate these financial strains and help these nations regain their economic stability and ensure the well-being of their citizens. For example, The food insecurity and malnutrition are major issues in many countries, Muslim countries of OIC. For example, in Iraq, over 4 million people are in humanitarian crisis. They need help due to intermittent conflict and fluctuating global oil prices. In Lebanon, food insecurity has mainly been driven by hyperinflation. The war in Syria has had devastating consequences, with over 12 million Syrians being food insecure, an increase of 4.5 million in 2020 only. And the world can imagine what will happen in Gaza once this war is over, and what kind of assistance this world would need to provide to those people living in humanitarian crisis. Dear audience, in such circumstances, poor countries approach to these financial institutions for loan. They provide loan to these nations with high interest rates, as I have mentioned, and put these countries into further troubles and economic crisis. There are many institutions working, but for example, as a sample, we will be discussing IMF to understand how this whole phenomena works. What is IMF? IMF is a United Nations specialized agency founded at Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 to secure international monetary cooperation, to stabilize currency exchange rates, and to expand international liquidity. And IMF has seen a notable increase in financing in recent times due to its crucial role in addressing various economic and financial crises in emerging economies. IMF is a distinctive blend of regulatory and advisory and financial roles, which are rooted in original objectives for which the institution was created. In order to achieve these aims, IMF engaged in analysis and provision of guidance pertaining to a country's economic policies. These include several aspects such as nation's exchange rate, governmental budgets, monetary management, credits. IMF, the financial sector and regulatory policies of a country. It also assesses these policies together with macro, finance, economic, structural policies that impact job prospects and employment in that country as well. There are economists and bankers around the world. They criticize such financial institutions like IMF. One of the major criticisms made towards these institutions are that IMF supported programs have faced criticism. Their approach to setting fiscal targets, often employing a one-size-fits-all methodology that fails to account for the unique circumstances of individual nations. The critics of IMF also oppose the institutions due to conditionality it imposes in return for its loans. They argue that these conditions are often oblivious to the hardships they place on the most vulnerable members of the society, the countries. Moreover, the impact of IMF adjacent programs on social spending, particularly for the underprivileged, has generated a multitude of debates with limited and inclusive outcomes. IMF's policies, reforms often dubbed conditionalities, have faced significant scrutiny due to their adverse effects, such as undermining the fiscal capacity for investment in healthcare and education. One of the most significant criticism leveled against IMF is that its conditionalities often prioritize economic reforms over social spending. This has led to reduction in crucial public services such as healthcare and education, as governments are compelled to trim their budgets to meet IMF requirements, are compelled to do the privatization of public services and other IMF demands, that has further aggregated the problems in these highly vulnerable members of the society, these countries, resulting in decline in provision of essential goods and services of these countries. A less talked about but equally critical concern is the way IMF programs aggregates the disparities between rural and urban population. During the economic turmoil, governments under the IMF influence and loan tend to allocate resources more towards cities where higher tax revenues can be generated. This urban-centric approach weakens the productive effect of education in rural areas, leaving rural population at a significant disadvantage. These conditions often fail to account for a unique economic, social circumstances of individual nation, in more severe social problems and reducing in social expenditures in these countries. The IMF's dual role as both a lender and supervisor also presents an inherent conflict of interest comprising the effectiveness of these policies. In some cases, the IMF loans has led to increased poverty in these countries, income inequality, and social problems in borrowing countries. One notable issue in IMF recommendations is the reduction in petroleum subsidies, especially in Pakistan. This reduction has resulted in higher price for petroleum products, transportation fares, and various other essential commodities, significantly affecting the general population and their cost of living. I don't blame IMF at all, because that is their business model. Any conventional financial institution would do that, because that is their business model. Otherwise, these institutions won't survive. That is their business model. But the question is with the governments when they approach these financial institutions for the services. Whereas Islamic economics and finance has a decent, comprehensive solution to these problems. If all these Muslim countries can come together to work on that solution, these problems can be tackled and these countries can be financially assisted in a more decent and respectful manner. What solution I propose here? If these countries do not go to these external financial institutions for financial assistance, so what should they do? So talking about OIC member countries, I propose MCW, another global institution formed under the platform of OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries. And what is MCW? MCW is Muslim Common Waqf, which is a beautiful product of Islamic banking and finance, which can provide an ultimate comprehensive solution to going to these foreign financial institutions. If the Muslim countries can come together and work on this solution, I believe the members of OIC countries, and not just the Muslim countries, many poor countries and third world countries around the world, they can benefit from this institution without paying the high amount of interest on those loans and the financial assistance which are provided today by the conventional institution. In that case, they will be assisted by that MCW, the Muslim Common Waqf, without interest. That will only help these countries to come out of their financial troubles and crises without paying high amount in the name of interest, and they will have sufficient to invest on their social sector, public sector, on their health care, on their education, and on the community and people living in their countries. So before I get into the details of this model, let's talk about Waqf. for those students, brothers and sisters, who do not understand the concept of waqf properly. What is waqf? Waqf comes from the Arabic word waqafa, which means to hold. Once a waqf is created, the property is detained, and neither the person who created the waqf nor its beneficiaries are entitled to ownership. Waqf is a charitable endowment held in trust under Islamic law. The donor dedicates the asset for the specific charitable purpose. Waqf is seen as a crucial Islamic social finance tool that generates recurring income for the benefit of a specific group of individuals. Contributing of a waqf fund can be distributed for a general socio-economic needs such as building places, financial expenses, establishing schools, developing infrastructure, welfare of the poor, and sustainable entrepreneurship activities. Waqf can be of many types. One type is property waqf, other is called the cash waqf. The property waqf refers to the asset or properties that are dedicated for charitable purpose. The cash waqf is the concept of cash waqf is not novel. It is historically evident, suggests its existence throughout the early period of Islamic history, even from the first century or first year of Hijrah of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Medina. In cash waqf, individuals contribute cash assets to waqf organization with the intention of supporting charitable purpose. With its historical roots dating back to the first century of Hijrah, cash waqf has evolved over time to address pressing cash needs. The establishment of cash waqf fund is a comprehensive process that involves the allocation of financial resources from the various channels. The sources include corporate social responsibility initiatives, voluntary contribution from external donors, deposit associated with temporary waqf, and many more. So these all become the sources for that cash waqf. And this institution of waqf is evolved in many centuries. The Islamic history, the concept in the Islamic history, the concept of waqf emerged promptly during the era of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the seed of this practice were sown in the second year after the hijrah of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he oversaw the construction of the first mosque of Quba. This act of piety laid the foundation for the very first religious waqf in Islam. Similarly, the second waqf was again created by Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he established waqf while the construction of Masjidun Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque in Madinatul Munawwara, was going on. So these concepts of waqf and institutions principally helped establishing first two great institutions of Islam. And that continued even in the time of Khulafa Rashidin, when Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he established a waqf with a property in Khaybar. Again, another companion of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Abu Talha, when he established another waqf with his property to benefit the Muslim communities living in Madinatul Munawwara. Another waqf when it was established by Sayyidina Usman ibn Affan, when he bought a water well to support the Muslim community living in Madinatul Munawwara. Another waqf which was established by many other companions of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam up till today, which are benefiting for last 1400 years continuously. They are helping and supporting some of the waqfs which were established by companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah Almighty has given them the life of 1400 years. Even today they are supporting and assisting the communities living in Madinatul Munawwara. Then this whole concept continued to evolve and develop during other dynasties of Muslim era. For example, Umayyads, they further developed the institution of Waqf, and then that did not remain a charity institution only. They underwrite the educational institutions, libraries, staff salaries, teacher stipends, and student scholarships. They all used to come in the era of Umayyads. They all expenses used to come from the Waqf institution established by the Umayyads. Then that continued in the era of Abbasids as well. The formal Waqf institution known as Shadr al-Wuquf was established, which was officially made to select the personnel who would run these Waqf institutions. So basically, this institution used to do interviews of those personnel who would hire people to run these Waqf and spend money and deal with the issues. So the involvement of caliphate and the government, judicial oversight were instrumental in ensuring effective Waqf practices during these dynasties in Iraq. Similarly, the Ayyubid dynasty in Egypt, they did a lot of evolution and development in Waqf institution. They tracted the agriculture, land became Waqf properties managed by Baitul Mal in their era. King Nuruddin, he evolved this institution much and established a land under Waqf institutions which used to benefit the institution, the government financially as well as developing the infrastructures and institution. Similarly, in the time of Salahuddin Ayyubi, this Waqf institution further evolved and developed, and he dedicated the lands for establishing educational institution, medical institution, as well as for the earnings of the nations. Later, in Mamluk dynasty, Waqf played a pivotal role in the development of economy. And then similarly, other caliphs and the rulers of Muslim states, they continued till the time of Ottomans arrives. The Ottoman Empire territorially expanded to the rest of the world, and as they continued establishing their control around the world, so continuously they kept on working on the institution of Waqf. So the Turkish lands and productive lands, they brought under the institution of Waqf. So this evolution of Waqf in the Ottoman Empire was not limited to traditional land-based endowments only. Even the minorities, they became interested in the institution of Waqf established by the Muslim governments. The practice of Waqf extended beyond the Muslim majority to encompass minority communities such as Christians and Jews living in the Ottoman Empire and Iraq. These communities adopted the Waqf institution, finding it advantageous and compatible with their own religious economic interests. Originally, the Muslim practices, that is why if today the Muslim world could establish Muslim common Waqf, that's why I said that won't be there for only Muslim countries. Even around the world, whoever country is troubled by paying a lot of interest against those loans, they all can benefit with those financial institutions established under the concept of Sharia compliance and under the concept of Sharia law. So these institutions can benefit the whole society. Why? Because Islamic economics, Islamic banking and finance is not just for the Muslim countries, but it is a beautiful alternative to all other economic systems prevailing today in the world. That's why we all propagate, and Minhaj University is propagating Islamic economics, banking and finance for last many years. Dear audience, they did so due to the perceived advantage these minorities they understood. The practice of Waqf was popular within the Ottoman Empire, where religious endowments were established to support essential urban amenities. Even during the Ottoman empires, now the city infrastructures, they were established and developed by the Waqf institution, including religious institutions, modern educational institutions, even commercial complexes and residential complexes were established and developed by these Waqf institutions during the time of Ottoman Empire. The Cyprus Ottoman Waqf had a significant presence spanning the years from 1571 to 1878. A notable turning point in the administration of Waqf across the Ottoman Empire occurred in 1826, when their management was centralized under the Imperial Awqaf Ministry of Ottoman Empire. So these were few examples from the history of Islam that this institution has proved to be the successful one, without putting a lot of burden, economic burden on the countries or states or principalities, and giving a lot of financial assistance towards developing more institutions, medical institutions, educational institutions, residential institutions, commercial complexes by Waqf and social finance tool. When Islam and Islamic economics has such a beautiful example and solution, why going towards interest-based solution for our economic crisis? Why cannot the Muslim countries, they can come together to establish Muslim common Waqf? There has a lot of money I see traveling in Middle East. On single buildings they are spending $3 billion. When we talk about these financials, when we look at these financials, that how much lending these IMF or other financial institutions are doing towards these countries, how much they would have done? $100 billion? $150 billion? I believe only 10, 12 Muslim countries, they can come together to bring this much amount together as a pool in Muslim common Waqf and start lending the money, start donating the money to the economies in crisis. To start lending the money and giving the money to the economies in crisis, and establishing medical complexes, establishing airports, establishing institutions, establishing scientific laboratories, space centers, and many more. They can do that with this much amount of money if they could bring this much amount together under the platform of Muslim common Waqf. It's just a matter of decision and moving towards this concept. For no other reason, just to give another economic solution to the problem. That the countries has seen interest-based economies or interest-based loans and financial assistance has not given anything to the countries. Here we are talking about Islamic finance. And this solution is given by the Islamic finance. That Islamic finance has a potential to give an interest-free product to the world which can bring these economies. And I believe even the non-Muslim countries and economies will benefit and appreciate this product. Once the Muslim common Waqf is established, they will have a benefit from that. So this envisioned model, I believe, will have a lot of support. So now, coming towards end, let's move towards the flow chart of the process of this proposed model. You can look at on the slide the flow chart. Just put the flow chart on the screen, yes. Now I will go point by point to describe that what is the proposed model. So the Islamic countries will actively engage in MCW, Muslim Common Waqf, fund by giving financial resources. Contribution will be made willingly, and countries will select how much to give based on their ability and willing to support the effort. Contribution will typically be in the form of monetary Waqf, indicating these countries' commitment to MCW, fund goals and ideals. Once the donation from the participating Muslim countries are collected, they will be placed into the MCW pool. This pool will serve as a central holding account in which the fund contributed will be consolidated. The money management and disbursement staff will oversee the MCW pool. The team will be in charge of overseeing MCW, funds overall financial functioning. In collaboration with MCW pool, the money will be transferred to the designated beneficiary validation team by fund management and payout team. This crew will be an important checkout point in the process. To validate the country or organization or a project seeking financial assistance, the beneficiary validation team will perform through the transparent examination process, will include a thorough examination of recipient. After the validation process is complete, the beneficiary validation team will present their findings and recommendation to a funds allocation approval board. This money management and distribution team will be tasked with the disbursing the allocated monies. They will carefully, precisely carry out the decision of the fund allocation approval board. In addition to direct financial assistance, a portion of MCW pool money will be dedicated for a various capacity building projects. These initiatives will include interest-free loans, sustainable development goals, development projects, financial literacy, Islamic finance education, other forms of education, research funding and scholarships. The MCW fund will assure openness, accountability, effective resource usage by following these clear and precise steps. Global MCW fund will stand out as a viable and appealing alternative to IMF and other external financial institutions. It will represent not just the resolve of Islamic nation to achieve self-sufficiency, but also a deep spirit of mutual assistance and solidarity. It will not only be about overcoming financial difficulties, but also about remaining resilient in the face of natural disasters. This concept has a potential to have a huge influence. As a result, it will have a good rippling effect on humanity as a whole. It will be a more than just a financial organization. It will be a tribute to teachings of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To ensure all these contributions, investments and payments adhere to Islamic financial principles, the MCW fund should adopt a standardized Sharia compliant structure. To ensure Sharia conformity, this framework should be established with the help of Islamic scholars and financial specialists. The Waqf pool of MCW fund will be managed with focus on maximizing profits while adhering to Islamic financial standards. To do this, the pool will be overseen by the professional staff with expertise in Islamic finance and asset management. According to Sharia principles, they will diversify their interest with the interest which may include real estate, shares and other authorized investment options by the Sharia scholars. To maintain openness, regular reporting and audit of the pools performance will be carried out. To ensure the fund development and sustainability, the MCW shall have a clear policy of reinvesting Waqf asset. Returns on these assets will be reinvested into the Waqf pool or used by a charitable purpose. In accordance with the fund objective, the fund's mission will be governed and reinvested strategically, which will be guided by the Islamic principles. And all these, so the loan or financial assistance will be provided to the nations interest-free, whereas the Waqf investment will be reinvested to increase the Waqf amount or the pool or a fund of the Waqf so that those service can continue. The MCW fund can evaluate a variety of suitable options for reinvesting cash Waqf asset and property Waqf revenue. Some of these choices include issuing Waqf sukuk, Islamic bonds to raise cash for specific projects, investing in Sharia compliant equities or enterprises, Waqf shares, and using the funds for the charity efforts that align with the fund's goal. Every investment option adhere to Islamic financial standards. The Waqf pool will be used wisely to support programs, initiatives that are in line with the fund's mission and goals. The financial technology will be used, blockchain technology will be used to ensure the transparency and security of all those agreements made between the countries as well as the institutions. Last but not least, our honorable guest, the Deputy Governor of the State Bank of Pakistan is here. So I would also like to propose this global model can also be applied on the national basis as well. When we go towards conventional financing options even within the countries, local laws, why cannot we establish a common waqf within the countries under the supervision of State Bank of Pakistan or any other relevant authority in the country, where the investors can come in? That model can be a social finance tool or a business model, whatever is suitable, where the funds can come together to assist the countries as well as the projects. So to support Islamic financial, through the Islamic financial tools, social finance tools, to assist the countries in trouble. Last but not least, this was a humble suggestion and advice, not a criticism to any international institution. They all are doing well in their own jurisdiction and supporting the countries in trouble. But when we talk about Islamic finance, when we talk about Islamic economics, so Allah Almighty and Sayyidina Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they have provided us with a comprehensive solution in the light of those teachings of Islam and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which are Sharia compliant and Sharia related, which can provide a solution, which solution can bring these economies out of their economic crisis interest free. So that will not increase the financial burden, rather they will bring out these nations out of economic crisis and they can support these countries in their development. If these Waqf model and institution has proved to be successful in 1,000 years history, if Ottoman Empire can become the topmost empire in 700 years with Waqf institution without interest paying models of financial assistance, why cannot today the Muslim world can look into this kind of options? If those dynasties like Umayyads, like Abbasids, like the Khulafa Rashidin and all these dynasties and rulers and the governors and caliphates of Islam, if they can develop their infrastructure interest-free financial assistance, why cannot 55 countries of the world, members of OIC countries, can come together to resolve and come up with a solution? Maybe 2-3 countries can come up with the model and idea, everyone will follow. I believe if the relevant authorities can look into this proposal, there are many more ways and channels we can come out of our crisis within our countries and collectively, globally. And the whole world, all the Latin America, Africa, and all these countries, does not matter which religion we all belong to. When talking about humanity, we all are together. When everyone is in crisis, so it is our collective responsibility to work together to come out of the financial issues and pressures together as a humanity, as a member of humanity at large. In the end, I would like to congratulate again all the organizers and team members of the Minhaj University Lahore, as well as our worthy, respectable, honorable guest dignitaries who have joined this conference. May Allah Almighty make this conference a successful one, and for whatever objective we have gathered here for, Allah Almighty bless us with the strength and the power to resolve and address the issues faced by the country and the world. Thank you very much. Wassalam.